Coin traders, what is going on? How are we doing? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at FETCH.AI, FET on that ticker. Very nice looking chart setup, and I actually want to start off looking at the weekly first. One of the big things about this chart is just how over the last couple of months we've been holding support for the close on this weekly on top of the 25 period, the 12 period exponential moving average. Now, additionally, the thing besides that is a very nice price level of support that has held for the last couple of months as well, despite having even a huge capitulation candle like we saw. Obviously, massive downside shadow, bigger than the size of the body of that weekly candle, but still, overall, very nice signs coming out of FETCH.AI right now. So looking at price level support coming in at 215.78. And now the thing about this weekly chart too is that we actually have a lot of red, green, red scenarios and setups where we actually have the bearish candles a little bit more engulfing of the bullish candles. But nonetheless, it's still a pretty good sign because on all these bullish ones, we have long lower downside shadows showing a lot of buying in those instances. So price would pull back, bulls would buy the dip, create a nice close for the body of these bullish candles, and then obviously now have our good breakout on top of this otherwise downward price trend, along with higher lows on the weekly chart here. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if we actually look back to the left, we broke support on top of the 12 period EMA before things really even got going here. So still found support in between the 12 and 26, which is a very nice sign. Typically what we find is support maintaining on top of the 12, kicking off that, and then on this pullback actually breaking that and then finding support on the 26. So to have this kind of flip to the other way around, where we start off actually breaking the 12 and finding support above the 26 and then rallying up and finding support on the 12 is a very strong sign here for this FETCH.AI chart. And especially if you notice too that on this pullback, still maintaining support, had overall decrease in volume. So now still looking to actually have that nice breakout, especially after confirming a back test and this level of support kicking off very nicely on the current weekly candle from this 12 period exponential moving average. And so right now, with basically about 5 days left to go on this weekly candle, do expect a lot more increased volume compared to what we saw last week. So we did see the week finish off with a close of 48.107 million for the FETCH.AI volume. So already currently on the week with just 2 days under our belt, looking at 22.509 million for this current weekly candle. So definitely anticipating a lot more increased volume here coming in for the volume compared to the previous week, which would be an extremely good sign, especially given this nice breakout pattern setup. So far, all of these moves, we have seen very nice rallies, strong upside volume, and then decreased volume on these pullbacks like we've seen. Decreased volume, very nice strong rally, very nice strong incoming influx of bullish volume here. And then on the pullback here, pullback in bearish volume as well. So pretty much checking all of the boxes for good bullish signs here in otherwise healthy markets, because as we do know, we have to rally up, pull back, back test previous supports, and also give the chance for the bulls to take a breather, the bears to step in, and then the bulls to confirm once again a strong market trend to the upside. So now would actually anticipate a little bit more influx and upside pressure, especially as we do get a little bit more bullishness from the altcoin space as well as Bitcoin itself. So what that means is that looking up overhead are going to face a pretty big, strong upside resistance point coming in for the weekly close at 280, which isn't necessarily that much from current price points, so only about less than 12%. So pretty easily achievable, especially in these crypto spaces, and also if we keep getting that influx of nice bullish volume as well. Now, not necessarily thinking that at this stage, we're just going to rally up, break this resistance trend line, and then keep rallying up to set new higher highs for this price chart here. Don't think that's necessarily as likely. And so that's kind of why this 280 level is just so key right now, because if we do find a rally up and break, it would actually need this to hold and maintain a lot of support in order to get a favorable upside breakout in order to break and top the current all-time high right now coming in at 348.5. So do want to look at some technical indicator oscillators here. Specifically, stochastic RSI has been one of the most relevant for altcoins right now, especially on the weekly chart. So we do have the stochastic RSI sitting well below the 20 line here. So we know that we are pretty overextended to the downside. And even if we look at the most recent time that we had our pullback that kicked off the 26 period EMA on this weekly, didn't even get necessarily below the 20 line, so weren't necessarily that far extended. And even then had a very nice bullish cross, which led to a lot of this great upside momentum. So hopefully we can see that, especially now that we do have both lines starting to converge on each other, and a very nice bullish breakout on the current weekly should actually kick off a pretty nice cross in the next candle or two when we do print that close. And then from there should hopefully see a repeat where we do have a lot of very nice upside momentum like we've seen previously on this weekly chart and the stochastic RSI. Okay, now dropping down into the 2-day chart, so kind of going backwards instead of starting at the daily, starting at the longer time frames and dropping down. So specifically, like we talked about, what we have here is a very nice candle that just closed on the 2-day. So the current one we're looking at just forming, but obviously looking at the most recent one that did just print. So very good sign, especially if you can see, had a pretty observable trend line here, also forming into a little bit more longer consolidation, which is interesting because this was on the downside direction. So now are drawing this based on the closes of the candles. And as you can see, looking left, big point of support, resistance, resistance, resistance. And the thing that's interesting about this type of setup too, is that typically when we do enter this type of consolidation setup, we actually bounce back and forth between these trend lines. And then when we're actually ready to break out, we actually don't. So we'll reject off of one trend line, but we don't make a full attempt and touch off of the opposing trend line. So typically we find this all the time in different types of setups where we actually bounce off the resistance, pulled back, and then didn't make a full attempt. So I actually showed a lot of strength here, finding support on top of the trend line. And that was one of our pretty big indicators that we were going to see a nice upside direction, especially now with the candle that just printed, breaking and closing on top of this huge tested trend line that we find as tested support as well as resistance on multiple attempts. So now typically, since this was a pullback consolidation, typically what we do find is a continuation of the initial direction. But obviously now with this breakout that does confirm, especially if we get this back test, a very nice directional upside move. So that's exactly what we're going to need to see now, especially if we look at these exponential moving averages that have maintained an otherwise bullish formation with the 12 on top, 26 on bottom, and then the 50, which has actually acted as an extremely nice downside support guide. As you can see, prices did stay within this level and maintained a close on top of the 50-period EMA for FETCH.AI here. So on the current 2-day, if we actually see a little bit of a flag pattern pullback test, kick off of some of these support levels, then that would be an extremely good sign and that confirmation that we need. So for example, if we actually look at some downside levels of closing support, going to look at a few key ones, specifically going to look at 245 and 236. So current candle that just closed smashed through both of those resistance levels, which is extremely nice. And even looking left, big zone of support here before sending prices up to set that new all-time high that we were looking at. So since right now we are still seeing prices sitting well above the exponential moving averages as well as on top of this previous resistance zone, that's going to be a very nice downside support. And like we said, would love to see actually a pullback, back testing and confirming this as that nice support before shooting prices back to the upside. This would be one of the strongest bullish setup patterns that we could actually look for instead of just seeing a continuation back to the upside. Although that would be extremely bullish as well, as long as we do get that continuation and extremely strong volume to the upside, which I'm not necessarily sure that we're going to see because all of the other cryptos right now are starting to basically form that continuation backside test as well, especially in light of the upcoming Ethereum announcement, whether or not we'll see approval for the Ethereum ETF coming up here in less than 2 days' time. So now dropping down into the daily chart, because this really highlights the effectiveness of what we were talking about. So you can see very nice bullish candle closing, breaking on top of a previous level of closing resistance, and then also a very nice bullish candle. And although the body wasn't necessarily as big, we actually had an increase in volume. So that was a very good sign, especially battling through a lot of selling pressure, trying to push prices back down. So very good sign here to have a second day of follow through and now have a very nice close on top of both of these resistance points and that very big zone. But like we said, still plenty of resistance overhead, especially for price. So looking right now at a big resistance level coming in at 256.53. So big point of resistance looking left, big level of support here before finally flushing below it. And so now do need to see bulls push his price back above that 256 level, but it wouldn't necessarily be a bad sign if we saw a flag type consolidation pattern while we do allow these exponential moving averages to kick up and also backtest this previous level of tested resistance, confirming it as that supportive level, and then pushing prices back to the upside. So not necessarily worried about a small pullback here in the coming days, especially if the rest of the crypto space wants to kind of cool off as well after a very nice upside move here. Yeah, so overall, really nice looking setup for FETCH.AI, maintaining a lot of these supportive levels, especially on the longer term chart, and especially being driven by an otherwise extremely bullish narrative this cycle, since I do believe AI, gaming, real world assets, and memes will probably be some of the strongest sectors in the crypto space. So definitely a lot of great things to look forward to with FETCH.AI, especially given this great technical structure and chart setup that we're looking at right now for FET. So as always, definitely drop your comments, issues, predictions, disagreements, all that stuff down in the comments sections below, or feel free to reach out and drop me a follow over on Twitter or X at @coin_trades is the handle over there. Looking forward to seeing everyone over there. But otherwise, that is going to go ahead and wrap up the show for today on FETCH.AI, FET on that ticker. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. And as always, do appreciate all the continuous love and support. It does mean so much. Stay safe, take care, everyone, and I'll catch you back in the next video.